All right, Kelly, you ready?
Yes. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm particularly interested in your work from home setup. You told me some amazing story about
Sprinter
your
van.
setup. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, just for you, I moved my setup into my dining room and got to kick my kids out of the house. So thank you. I get to be right in this light-filled, beautiful room. I didn't want to broadcast my bedroom, which is my sometimes my office, to 100 and so people.
yeah, totally.
Just wanted to keep that private. But
So
sometimes it's in my Sprinter van, which is parked out in front of our driveway. And sometimes it's at my parents' house.
gotcha. That's awesome. Um, to everyone who has joined, just a quick reminder: if you do have questions along the way, please post them in the Q&A, and I'll either pull them in during the conversation or we'll get to them towards the end. We'll talk for at least 20 minutes, maybe a bit longer. These tend to run a little bit over, and we'll make sure that we've set aside enough time to cover questions. So Kelly, first off, thank you so much for being a guest today. Um, Before we jump in, can you just give a quick background on what you did at Twitter, what your role was, just for some context and what you're doing today?
Totally. So thanks so much for having me. I'm a big fan of density. And just to give a little background on myself. So 10 years ago, I walked into a small startup called Twitter. It was a 100-person company. Dick was the COO at the time, and I became his executive assistant. And my role quickly evolved as he became the CEO 6 months later. My role became chief of staff, and we were off to the races. Um, as many people probably on this call know, building a company is not easy, especially one that has a lot of public scrutiny. And everything from the Secretary of State calling us to shut down or to keep Twitter open during Arab Spring
Hmm.
to everything under the sun. So it was a really intense time and really fun. I learned so much. And one of the strategic projects that I took on while I was in that role was head of workplace. We were rapidly expanding into multiple offices globally, and Dick wanted someone close to him to really help shepherd that those opening of those offices. And so as we expanded into over 14 offices globally, I took on the workplace team and helped organize around that. So that was 6 years at Twitter. And then after that, I became,
What was the headcount growth from like when you started to when?
it was 100 people to 5,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then today, what are you doing?
Yeah. So I, in between Twitter and what I'm doing today, I was the chief of staff and head of workplace at a company called Color, which was awesome. And then Dick Adam Bain, who ran revenue at Twitter, we decided to join forces and we founded O1A, which is a venture capital firm. And so we've been doing that for the last 2 years and closed our funding for our first fund last year and gone to invest in density.
So I think one of the reasons that I wanted to be able to interview you is you have experience with chaos, and you have experience with chaos as it relates to people and as it relates to space. And so I think like we often will talk to a lot of people in real estate and workplace strategy, but really wanted to hear some of just kind of from a an operator who is running or working at a public company, what does that look like, and how to navigate through sort of an uncertain period. So you've talked to a bunch of people in our early conversations. Mentioned talking to a bunch of your friends at current companies. What are they saying and what do they think right now? Our primary question really being, how do you bring employees back to the office safely?
Right. I mean, this is a question that everybody's asking, and obviously the main point of this talk. And I think that um, what I'm hearing from the major. So just so you know, I run a group called EA Mafia, and so the CEO, the assistants of CEOs of some of the major tech companies are in this group, and so I've been able to talk to them and also talk to Twitter, Slack, Airtable, SoFi. And most of them are holding back and they're saying, we're okay. We know how to work remotely. We want to keep our employees safe. And they're comfortable. And the worst thing that we could do is bring everyone back too soon and then have to take them back to home and work remotely. So we're going to sit this out for now. We're going to continue to communicate and do everything we can to provide what they need and the resources they need to work really well at home. And we're going to see, some of the mistakes that other companies might make bringing their employees back too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have a phased in approach. And likely what I'm hearing is that September is really the starting point of phasing in 20 to 25% of employees and really only bringing back employees that have a difficult work from home situation, or are dealing with sensitive information like trust and safety,
Sure.
and can't review that stuff at home.
So what about work from home setups? You're in a Sprinter van. You're thinking about potentially like continuing to work from home for some period of time when you go back. I mean, are these companies paying for home internet? Are they paying for stand-up desks, baristas? Like, what is the? Not to generalize.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, it's like pay for a
barista
dedicated barista.
Delivery.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So most of them are providing some type of an allowance now. So making sure that really like giving them their own preferences. Like you don't need to go pick the desk that's going to go in their house. You want to give them some flexibility and give them, $200 to $500. One company is giving $500 allowances, and it's whatever you want to buy. You can expense it and get what you need to feel comfortable working from home. So I think I think that it will never be the same again. There will no longer be this stigma on working from home means that you're slacking off, and this will become a new office. And so really getting employees set up for that and having the flexibility to do that will be great.
So if you were still at Twitter, or if you were working at any public company right now, call it 5 to 10,000 employees, you have offices in many different countries. Do you recommend a centralized approach? This is what we're going to do. Everyone's coming back during this particular time. Do you say, this is our policy, but these are the regional laws you need to apply to those regional sort of policy and expectations? Or do you decentralize decision-making? What's your approach?
I think you really have to decentralize it. I think you have to create a consistency of safety standards that you have for your company, whether it be, everybody has to have social distancing within elevators. Everyone has to have some type of thermotesting. There has to be 6 feet, apart from desks initially. The snack situation needs to have only, no longer the big scooping bins, but have, your bag of chips that you can grab in a dispensary, something like that. So having some of those sets of standards, but you really need to give the people who are leading their teams and understand those teams in those other remote areas. Now they're responsible. And so they know their employees, they know they're working with them on a daily basis, and they know the culture. And so they really need to weigh in and allow, have some accountability and responsibility on communication, and how they're setting up the bringing everyone back into those offices.
Sure.
Also, can I just make one more point?
Yeah, of course.
The other thing that I think is interesting is that, not a lot of people own their own offices. So maybe if you're a large company like Google and Facebook, you own all your own real estate. And so you can really control it coming in and coming out of your building. But most of the time, you're renting, and you have to deal with different types of landlords. So if you have different offices with different landlords, you really have to be communicating with that landlord what their plan is, so that you can start creating a standard and consistency across all your offices.
Mm-hmm. Do you close conference rooms? This is one of the questions that came in. Do you open conference rooms? Do you pull furniture out? Is it a moratorium on physical meetings? Do you meet at a distance and digitally, even if you're in the same office? Like, what would you do?
That is exactly what's happening. I just spoke with EA, who's working for a tech company in Palo Alto, and they reopened. They're reopening in June 1st, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking all of the chairs out of meeting rooms. They will no longer have, groups of people meeting together. in the office. And, I think it's, in a way, like, it's smart. You don't want people to be in a closed office space. I know for myself, going into a meeting room at Twitter that 8 engineers were in, it's like hot, and there's, a lot of personal germs going on there, right? Being
Yep.
shared. And so that's probably not what we need to do for phase one. Phase one, I think, is going to be a lot longer than whenever we can go into phase two.
How long?
And maybe to the end of the year.
Phase one being like, this is sort of this is what you're talking about, like early employees coming back, they're like critical,
Exactly.
or like have to do their work in person.
Exactly.
Can
I think that is the first phase that actually will last the longest, because you'll have a lot of people who can't go on their public transportation to get to work. They, they don't feel safe yet because the numbers haven't decreased in our areas. There's just really isn't any reason, if you can work remote, to want to go into the office, unless, like I'm saying, you have a really difficult work from home situation, and then you'd be a part of the 20%.
So as chief of staff, I spent a lot of time thinking about communication to teams, thinking about like messaging and whatnot. We've heard repeatedly that one of the biggest concerns around safety is that it's a two-sided problem. The first is, can you make it safe? And the second is, do your employees believe you? And I'm curious, in like the second portion, what do you do? Is it regular updates? Is it all hands meetings? Is it like, how do you create not only the conditions for safety, but also the perception of it?
I think you have to create this transparent and honest conversation, and really let people know that you don't have all the answers. And so I think erring on caution will only make people trust you more. And, if you are the type of leader who isn't communicative, I think you're going to walk down a really difficult path building trust with your employees. And so, yeah.
So, I mean, can you speak, like what would you practically
Tactics.
do? Yeah, tactically. Like, is it like a weekly email? Is it we're all jumping on a call and we're going to talk about this? Is it a survey? Like, what do you do to engage your employees?
Okay, so you're talking about building trust. I think the most important thing would be having all of your information living in one place. So whether it be, we used to call it a Twitter Confluence page, or, some type of intranet where you are updating, what is being done, what are the questions that are still out there, what are some of the answers that, we have today. And I think having that as open communication every single week, at an all hands meeting, obviously it's all online now. But, we would have an all hands meeting every Friday, and we would have open Q&A. And these are the type of questions that would come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being in that moment, being honest. So having a central point of information that people can follow, and then also having, verbal communication where you're speaking to your employees. But is definitely key. I think surveying your employees early now and finding out where they're at. Do they want to stay at home? Are they having a really difficult situation right now? That shows empathy. That shows that you want to hear from them, and that you want, to start incorporating their feedback into the plan.
What would you ask them?
Oh man, I would ask them like very clear questions. How is your work from home situation? Rate it from 1 to 10. If you could come into the office like 1 through 5 days, how many days would you come in? Right? Because I might not, I actually really enjoyed working from home. For myself, I commute into the city from Menlo Park, and it's been really nice for me. I have a good situation. So I might want to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week. And if I had that option, it would be great. And just to know that my employer, Dick Costello, was listening to me, that would make me feel really good. I think also trust level, asking them questions like, how do you feel about the safety about coming back into the office? And that will give you a really good sign where people are feeling.
So there's safety, and then there's a concern about, do I have a business to come back to? Like, is there a job that I can come back to? And I realized that perhaps we've already been through the first phase of that, where people are furloughed or let go or whatever it may be for the industries that were directly affected. But, I've spoken with a number of people who are concerned just for the overall solvency of the business, completely irrespective of the safety of the building. Is that something that, like, I guess it depends on the culture, but is it something that you prioritize? How do you talk about that? How do you make promises that are not false? Do you have some perspectives on that?
I feel like this is such a generic answer, but I mean it like so wholeheartedly, to be as transparent and as honest as you can be about the business, about where the numbers are, about your runway. Um, I recently had a very good friend who was hired to be the CMO of a company, and she was like basically lied to in the very beginning on how much runway they had. And she got in, and as soon as COVID hit 2 months later, she was laid off, and she left a really
Hmm.
great job at CMO. So it's just, I think that honesty and that trust can make such a difference.
Yeah, certainly. So a couple questions. The companies that you're talking to, is that your dog?
Yeah,
That's
he's
awesome.
barking
They're
at the
talking
door.
to each other.
I'm
How?
sorry. Let me just open the door really quickly.
Okay, no problem. If you have questions, please feel free to toss them in the Q&A, and I'll make sure that we
Classic.
post them. So you're talking to companies, how are they thinking about approaching screening their staff? Are we talking about a class system? Like, I heard the term the immunes for the first time, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable. Just like, what does screening look like, and what does testing look like as a comeback strategy?
I've heard so much about thermotesting. There's some great technology emerging where you have sensors that are showing people's heat without even having to do a thermometer. Right? You just walk through a door and they can tell already if you are, high fever or not. I think there will definitely be thermotesting, but I don't think that there will be a class system. I mean, we don't know yet if antibodies truly will protect you from the situation of getting COVID again. And really, I don't know if it necessarily makes sense to just have those people there. It would be such a random group of employees, right? So be more thoughtful about the business and
Mhm.
what you're, what is the truly what you need to get done, and who really needs to physically be in the space. And I think it's really looking at the employee base of who's looking at sensitive information and should be doing this from the office, and who are the people that are really have a strained home situation and can't get their jobs done.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, like, even if you do find people inside your workforce that are um, have antibodies or are considered to be less likely, what is that cross section? It's sort of be a random group of people.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, but you really don't think that we're going to find ourselves in a circumstance where, like, health data is now a part of whether or not you're allowed to physically go into a building? And I'm not asking that as a loaded question, like I believe otherwise. I'm just curious. Like, we've seen crazier shit happen. Um, and so I'm just curious, like, what is too far for companies?
Man, I mean, I'm not an expert in this. I feel like we
Neither am
will
I.
have a lot of information. We already have so much information, and obviously it's evolved. In the very beginning, it was like, wear a mask, right? No one was wearing masks. Now everybody's wearing masks. Now, where is that going to look like in a month? I think it's just going to continuously evolve, and we'll put that all in our playbook. But to hand select employees who have antibodies, or even I've seen a lot of message boards who are saying, let the leaderships and C-suite team come back. But that is not at all what I think would be effective. I even talking to, some of the biggest companies out there, their C-suite is not coming back until January, right? They're thinking like, I'll be the last one to come back. Like, there's no reason why we should put ourselves at risk.
But
To
so,
come
okay,
back
but
to the
this is,
office.
this is a great, no, but this is a great point. So this is actually cuts to the heart of so I have, yeah. So, like, we've got an interesting comment, like, C-suite needs to come back first. That's actually, it's really interesting because I've heard both sides of this. I've heard, if you talk to the executive team, um, or you talk to individual employees, their perspective is like, our leaders lead from the front.
Right. So you
If
put them
you,
out there. So the
but if
C-suite
you
should
wait,
go and get coronavirus and
but
but I'm not saying, I think if you're leading from a place where you're saying only people who really need to go back to the office because they want to be there, right? Because they just can no longer work at their and at home.
mm-hmm.
That is way different than saying you have to go and you have to work.
So choice and consenting to go back to the office are critically important in sort of the decision. It's not. You're essentially saying companies should not be mandating employees to come back and be guinea pigs in some broader experiment. You're suggesting
100%.
like you should be giving agency to employees and surveying them to ask, their comfortability with coming back or their urgency to come back, and then trying to create a safe environment for them.
Absolutely. 100%.
Because if you talk to risk management teams, they're like, there's no way that our executive team is coming back.
Oh, yeah. True,
Like,
very true.
there's a portion of these organizations that are just like, I'm sorry, but we're going to pull rank. We're never going to allow our executive team to come back first. And it just seems like, and I'm not taking a position on this, it just seems like these organizations are dealing with what does it mean to lead? What does it mean to do work? What does it mean to be, and this is like the class system is like who is allowed to go back, who gets to choose to go back, who doesn't get to choose to go back.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm stating things
If
instead of
you
making
are
a
working
question.
at, I think we can't completely generalize one type of business, right? We're in tech, and tech is so different from Tyson Foods or from, I don't know, a bank or whatnot, right? Where, the bank down the street, Wells Fargo, they have to be there. They'll probably lose their
Sure.
job. And same with, which we were seeing at Tyson, and now everybody has COVID there. And so we're talking about a completely different business here. We're talking about tech where it's way more possible for you to work from home. And I can't imagine, even just thinking about Del Harvey, who runs trust and safety at Twitter, I cannot imagine her not coming in and her team going in. Like if her team's going to be there, she will be there.
Right.
So let that define leadership. Like if your team is there and you're not there, then
You got a problem.
Yeah,
you probably shouldn't be leading the team.
Exactly. Like that is going to solve itself, if you're working at a company where you're, where everyone's back except the CEO, like that's going to meet BuzzFeed, man, or TechCrunch, right?
Certainly.
So I just think that's going to play itself out. And yeah, I don't know if people are worried about that and that, then maybe you're not maybe the leadership team isn't the right leadership team at your company.
So like tech is extremely lucky to be able to work from home in some cases without interruption. And perhaps even in other cases with even more productivity than they had previously because they've eliminated the commute. What is the rush to go back for those organizations that are either in tech and can support work from home, those organizations that are not in tech but are tech enabled and are capable of working from home? What's the point in an office? Why come back at all?
Man, I mean, human interaction is so critical. Also, like leaving your spouse every once in a while is healthy. But yeah, I mean, obviously I think that you get a lot from being in the same vicinity of people, doing brainstorms, going on offsites. I know whenever we go on an offsite, it's like so helpful. Obviously that's different from being in the office. But I think that now that we're going to have, a different standard, which will be great. We'll go, you will need to go back because it's so healthy to be with each other. We're meant to be together as humans. And we can get a lot done seeing each other. Those little side conversations in the hallway was how I did my job as chief of staff at Twitter. I got so much information by talking and walking the halls and finding people and hearing their stories and hearing what they were dealing with. And that's critical. That's critical for leadership team to be seen and to talk to people. And you know how it is being a CEO of a company. Like your employees, they need to see you and they need to feel like you're all part of the same team. So that'll never change.
I'm not sure they like me as much as people liked you or currently like you, but I appreciate the sentiment. we only have a few more minutes, and I want to make sure that we make time for any additional questions that there may be. I'm just looking.
Let me tell you some of the resources that are out
Yes,
there for
yes,
some of
please do.
for people who are interested. Some stuff that I've dug up that I thought was really cool. McKinsey Briefing. So McKinsey Company, the consulting firm, has some amazingly great, like they update it on the daily. It's a briefing material that really gives high level updates on where COVID is at and how this affects businesses on a global scale, which is super helpful if you have employees in other places or looking about a travel plan. So really, really great stuff there. And also just like factual information. So you're not looking up on the news if you're trying to embed something into a playbook or onto an intranet system. Almanac.io was great. I feel like they've centralized all state by state reopenings, which is really helpful as well. And then two kind of off the beaten path, but I think is something that as employers, we all need to be like thinking about is, a company called Join Modern Health. Full disclosure, we do fund them, but they're an amazing company that provides mental health and wellness through in a virtual capacity for employees. And so it's a benefit that you provide to your employees. And I think right now, more than ever, mental health is so critical and important and can really show that you're thinking about outside of the box ideas for them to stay healthy. And the other one is, if you're looking for just like a really simple way to show your gratitude to your employees, Loop and Tie is such an awesome site. It's local craftsmen in the US, and you set the dollar amount, can be anywhere from $5 to $50, and they go on and they can pick the gift themselves or they can donate the gift. And so no waste and something that they want. So those are just some resources I thought could be helpful.
That's great. I'll sort of like close with one question. I've been trying to ask everybody, what's the latest you think people will go back? And I realize it differs based on organization and region, but like, what's the worst case scenario?
It seems to me the latest could be January 2021, that we'll be in this situation for the rest of the year. I definitely think there will be a number of tech companies that will do that. And have already confirmed on at the leadership level. So I think we need to prepare for that and really think about how we're going to support our employees working from home and what we can do to be great communicators and really understanding their needs and coming up with creative ways to support them.
Yeah. We have another question I guess we'll just maybe ask around hospitality. Do you have a perspective on restaurants, hotels, sort of the broader economy? I know we've been talking about tech and about how to keep people safe or think about when to come back, but what about the rest of the world?
Well, it seems that state by state we want the economy to get back, and so they will. It's likely they will open, and so question is more on our consumer side. How safe are we going to feel going and staying at a hotel? My husband just left today to go to LA. He drove because he needed to do some business down there. And he's actually staying in our Sprinter van. And so just people are going to think of more creative ways to, maybe go stay with family members or not if they do need to travel. And I don't think it's going to look the same. For restaurants, I'm excited. I think this delivery and, curbside pickup stuff is so helpful. And, some of the best restaurants in the city are doing such great business now with these curated family meals. And I would love for that to be something that we see ongoing after COVID.
Do you have a perspective or something that you feel like most people are not talking about? A reality or perspective that you've heard that just most people are not considering?
One thing that I have been thinking about a lot is if you are, going to go back to work, what is the situation like for your kids, and are they going to be able to go to school? So if you reopen too early and you expect your employees to be back at work and they don't have a solution or a safe solution for their kids because the kids aren't in school yet, really needing to think through that and think through, the timing and what your employees need, support for that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Childcare costs will spike in the event that, should you essentially tie reopening to when schools reopen? And also, do people feel safe sending their kids back into school? I mean, it just feels crazy. Like this set of problems is totally insane.
Face masks, etc., for them. Like they
Yeah.
won't be out on the playground. I don't know. I don't
But
know what it looks
what
like.
3-year-old keeps a face mask on properly? You know what I
Not
mean?
mine. Not
Yeah.
mine.
All right. To everyone who joined, a big thank you. I know that like 25 minutes goes by really quickly. Kelly, you're awesome, and I really appreciate you setting aside the time.
Thank you
Um,
so much for having me.
if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either some of the folks at Density, and we can pass them on to Kelly. But otherwise, we will see you next time. So thanks so much for taking 20 minutes. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks. Bye.